Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Not sure why my name there is wrong, but whoever did the deck probably got it wrong. My name is not Diane, my name is Antonio. I'm an industry manager for the travel sector at Google here in Portugal, which means I work with some of the biggest travel stakeholders in the market in order to help them succeed in the digital landscape. Before we begin, I just would like to once again thank Nest for setting this up, and and inviting me to be here and share some knowledge with you. Now, what brings me here today is to share some really interesting insights with you. I think yesterday we had an amazing day. We focused on startups, we focused on corporations, we focused on government entities, collaboration. But I would like to take a step back and bring us to the core of what the travel industry is, which is travelers, right? I think without travelers, none of us would be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some insights of a recent study that we did in partnership with Kantar that looks at the expectations of the evolving traveler. Now, behavioral insights can really make a difference for the travel industry, right? I mean, what does make a traveler choose a certain location, a certain airline, a certain hotel versus another? I mean, it can be a location, it can be price point, it can be a loyalty program, or even just reviews that they are reading online, right? So obviously, understanding what drives this behavior is really important so that different travel companies can better serve the needs of travelers. But there's a crucial issue here, which is the way people behave is often different from the way they say they will behave. I mean, let's look at a very simple example. Think about all the people that have as an expectation for 2023 as a resolution to exercise more. Anyone else here has that resolution? How has that been going just for the first week? Well, okay. Do you think you'll still have your gym membership by April? Just kidding. But the fact is, people often don't behave the way they say or they expect they behave, right? And this happens in travel as well. I mean, let me give you a very simple example. In my case, I was planning a summer trip across 5 countries. I had this expectation of, doing a lot of stuff with both my wife and my kids in Europe. But then, last minute, we had, some issues. There were some countries that we could not get in still because of COVID restrictions. And, lots of things happen, right? So you are planning on doing this amazing trip, five different countries, going all over Europe. But then, I mean, there are so many things that can happen that at the end of the day, you decide for something much, much more simple, right? For example, in my case, I was, again, planning this kind of road trip across Europe, but for several different reasons, I thought that was probably not the best way to go. So I ended up doing this, going to Disneyland with my kids. Why, you ask me? Well, I never thought I was going to go to Disneyland with my kids because I mean, will a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old enjoy Disneyland, let alone remember the experience? I didn't think so. At the same time, I was really, really scared to, bring 2 toddlers to what's probably one of the most crowded amusement parks in the world. I mean, I think we've all read those reviews of people standing in lines for 2 hours with their kids crying and then having to run for the lines at lunch. It wasn't pleasant, but when I started actually looking at Disney as an option, what I saw was that, ticket prices were actually quite okay because this was end of summer 2021, so the park had just opened. It wasn't peak season. At the same time, we found out that there was limitation in the number of people that could actually enter the park, so that means I would never get those 1 to 2 hour lines that you usually have in a Disneyland amusement park. At the same time, we found out that there was a 7-day cancellation policy, and I only had to pay 10% of the price up front. So in case we had a change of mind, it will all be good, right? At the end of the day, we ended up booking a 5-day trip hotels included, meals included. I mean, at the time, that was what was perfect for us. It was not what we were expecting, but it was what served us at the time. And I'm not sure if the kids will remember it, but I can tell you they will love it. So basically, as I mentioned, at the beginning of my journey, I was planning on doing this 5-country trip across Europe, and I ended up in Disneyland. What made me change my mind? What exactly made me behave different from what I said I was going to behave? And most importantly, what patterns can we learn from this that will help us provide to travelers what they need and not what they say they need? And at the core of all of this is what we call the say-do gap. The say-do gap is basically the gap between attitudes, what people say they're going to do, and the gap between the behavior, what people actually do. Understanding, obviously, the gap between these two is really, really important, because it will help us better help serving our customers. And the reason there is a gap between this is because of a lot of external environments, right? If we look at pre-pandemic years, this was mostly due to personal issues, right? I have a last-minute change of heart. Something happens with my kid. He gets sick. I need to change my travel plans. But especially since the pandemic, what's been happening is that there's been this uncertainty and volatility in the environment has been increasing every day, right? It started with the pandemic, Ukraine war, climate change, rises in cost of living. All of these external factors have been making very, very difficult for the traveler to actually behave the way they are expecting to behave, and for travel companies to understand exactly how travelers are going to behave. So I guess the big challenge here is, how do we focus not on what people say they want or what people say it's going to impact their behavior, but actually on what they end up doing? So in my case, how can we understand what's actually going to drive me to choose Disneyland instead of traveling across 5 different countries in Europe? So as a company, obviously one of our missions is to provide the industry and the ecosystem with insights, because obviously Google has access to a lot of data. So one of our missions is to provide the industry with insights that will allow them to better understand the ecosystem and how the traveler will behave. So we set out to do this exploration, this research in partnership with Kantar, and we were trying to understand 3 different things. First, how have the expectations of the traveler changed over time? How have their behaviors evolved? But most importantly, how can travel companies adapt both their offers and their strategies to better serve the needs? So, as I mentioned, what we are analyzing is the gap between what people say they are going to do and what they actually do. And understanding what impacts their attitude is pretty easy, right? You run a survey, you ask people, okay, what impacts your travel decisions? And they just tell you, you write it down. Pretty simple, right? But understanding what actually impacts their behavior is a little bit more difficult. So what Kantar did here was they ran a research based on the Net Promoter Score, the NPS, which is backed up by decades of research and has been proven to be very closely related to actual behavior. And what we did was we ran this analysis across 6 different countries: the US, Spain, France, UK, Germany, and Italy, across 17,000 travelers that had traveled between April 2021 and April 2022. In this analysis, we looked at 35 different experience clusters, or 35 different experience elements, from service offering to transparency, credible reviews, sustainability. And then we clustered these experience elements into 9 different groups, and we analyzed them and tried to get some insights out of it. Now, unfortunately, we won't have time to cover everything and all the data points because it's quite a robust study. But I wanted to highlight the 4 key insights that we found in this research. The first one is that travelers are looking for effortless experiences. Oh, sorry. Second one, they are focusing on trust over loyalty. Travelers are demanding fair value exchange. And finally, we found that there are a lot of inconsistent views on sustainability. I'll go through each one of them now. Now, as I mentioned, travelers are looking for effortless experiences. If we think about the whole planning of a trip, I think every day it's becoming, more of a hassle, let's say, and more complicated. Actually, in our research, we found that 44% of travelers said they encountered at least one pain point during the planning of their trip. And what we found as well is that 77% of the time these travelers spend on planning the trip, and only 23% of the time they actually spend on enjoying the trip. So obviously, what travelers want, and what we all want when we go on holidays, is not only to reduce that time of 77%, but we wanted to make it also as effortless and seamless as possible, right? And when we look into this with more detail on actually what impacts this effortless experience and the gap between the say and the do, one of the very interesting insights that we found is the importance of inspirational content. So actually, when we asked travelers so that they could stack rank all of these experiences on how important they were for their travel behavior, when it came to inspirational content, it was one of the least important ones. It actually ranked 23rd out of 35. But when we ran the Net Promoter Score analysis, we actually found that inspirational content was the 7th most important experience element when it came to impact in travel behavior. Now, what this means for travel brands is not only do you need to associate your brand with inspirational content, but you need to create it as well. Even if we're thinking just about when a traveler is booking a room in your hotel, find ways of showing inspirational content to them. Don't just show them pictures of your room. How can you make their experience a little bit more inspirational to better influence their behavior? So this is really, really important. At the same time, at the core of having an effortless booking experience comes, the booking experience by itself. And what we found is that service offering, which is at the core of the booking experience, it's in the top 3 most important factors, both on people's attitudes and on people's behaviors. So, what does this mean for travel companies? If you're not doing it yet, this should be the time to look into your website and try to understand if there are any challenges, any barriers that are in any way preventing people from having an effortless booking experience, right? Does your website have the right speed? Does your website have the right forms of payments for the markets that you are targeting? Do you provide a good user experience? This should probably be at the top priority of your company right now, as it really affects travel behavior at the moment. Now, second insight that we found is that travelers are focusing more on trust over loyalty. So actually 41% of respondents mentioned that trust on their travel provider was an important factor for their decision making. And the way we looked at trust as a good proxy here was we looked at health and safety and proven credibility. And when we looked at this on the impacts, not only on attitudes, but more importantly on behaviors, they scored more than loyalty programs. Out of all the markets that we studied, there was only one market where this was not true. Can anyone guess which market that was? The United States, exactly. The United States, out of the 6 markets, it's the only market where loyalty programs impact more travel behavior than trust. And this is really important for you as well, because if you are communicating with different markets, you also need to understand that they will behave in different way. And for Americans, loyalty programs are really, really important. But going back to trust, I just wanted to highlight a little bit the proven credibility part. Why? Think of your own, booking and travel experience. Do you actually book a hotel before looking at reviews? Do you go to a certain destination before talking maybe to a friend or to someone who has been there before? Probably not, right? So especially with digital, proven credibility has been becoming really, really important, right? And this is something that we should all be focusing on. Coming back to health and safety as well, I just wanted to highlight that although it is more important than loyalty programs these days. Travelers also tend to overstate the importance of this factor in their travel behavior. Actually, when we asked them, when we ran the surveys, they ranked health and safety as the 6th most important factor. But when we actually looked at the NPS analysis, it was ranked as 22nd. So there's a big gap here, and the reason we believe this is happening is probably as we are moving away, from pandemic times, people are not that concerned about, health and hygiene factors, social distancing, that type of stuff. Obviously, there's a baseline that we'll always need to have. I mean, people always look at the cleanliness of a hotel, of how well it is maintained. This is still really, really important. But all those factors that were more related to the pandemic, they seem to be fading away. Ooh, I think I had this one already. Okay, third insight, travelers are demanding a fair value exchange. And this doesn't mean that travelers are looking for the cheapest option possible. Actually, 38% of the travelers we surveyed say they were more likely to plan or book a once-in-a-lifetime trip than ever before. And I think this is normal. I mean, we were all closed at home for almost 2 years. I think we started valuing travel more than ever before. So I think this is quite normal, right? And actually, when we look at this a little bit deeper, what we see is that 21% of travelers had at least one pain point on the value of their trip. So travelers are expecting and demanding value out of their trips and what if they pay for their trips. And as I mentioned, this doesn't mean paying the cheapest price possible. Actually, 66% of travelers said they did not pay the cheapest option they found when booking their trip. And I mean, if you, again, looking back at our own experiences, when you are booking a hotel, are you actually looking at the cheapest option possible, or are you looking first at other factors such as location, reviews? Again, if you're looking at an airline, again, are you looking at the cheapest option, or are you first looking if you have direct flights or not, the time of departure versus time of arrival, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something really, really important, and I think for the travel industry, it presents a really good opportunity because it means we don't need to focus only on price. We need to focus more on what we are actually offering to the client and making sure that we are giving the right value for the price that they are paying. Now, final insight, a lot of inconsistency on sustainability. And what we found, and sometimes this might be a little bit hard to hear, is that sustainability is currently not a key driver of travel behavior, but its impact has been increasing over time. Also, and I think some people mentioned this yesterday, which is when we look at younger audiences, they are much more concerned about sustainability than older audiences, right? So this is not a topic that we should discard just because we see it's not one of the main drivers of travel behavior. But people do say that sustainability is important for them, and to kind of showcase a little bit the gap of the say and do here, I want to ask a question. So who here cares a lot about sustainability? Lots of people. Okay, no, keep your arms up, keep your arms up. Who here took a flight last year for a holiday or a leisure trip? Okay, out of you, how many paid the voluntary fee to offset your carbon footprint? Okay, 2 people. So this is the gap, see? And again, this doesn't mean that people don't care about sustainability. What it means is that people have other core priorities that need to be met first. What we actually saw was that if all the core needs are met, people will choose the more sustainable option. At the same time, when we looked in more detail, we saw that tangible sustainability factors had a higher impact on behavior. What this means also, and in my personal view, is that the tourism industry will only thrive on sustainability once it actually delivers value through sustainability. So think of people that buy a Tesla. Do people buy a Tesla because they are really concerned about the environment, or just because Tesla is a really good car, right? Do people go, to a more off-the-beaten-track destination because they are concerned about over-tourism, or is it because going, to a more quiet place where there's not a lot of tourism provides a better experience for them? I think it's the latter, to be honest. And I think that once the tourism industry figures out how to deliver value through sustainability, we will have a lot of success with this. Now, summarizing the key insights and what they mean for you, travelers are looking for effortless experiences, and you should provide them with inspirational content to ease their decision and with seamless booking processes. Travelers are focusing on trust over loyalty, so don't expect loyalty programs to work with everyone, and think about how you can prove your credibility next to travelers. They are demanding fair value exchange, so think on what you can offer to the traveler in order to give them more value for what they are paying. And finally, there are inconsistent views on sustainability, but it is an increasing impact of travel behavior, and the more tangible and more value the sustainability brings to the traveler, the better. Now, if we look at these insights and kind of to close this off, what we see is that digital kind of helps us in all of these, right? So if we look at effortless experiences, digital is probably the best way to provide travelers with inspirational content, and the best way for us to have a seamless website that moves a traveler from inspiration to booking. Trust. Online is probably the best place where a traveler can read reviews and understand if a destination or a hotel is better over another. Value exchange. What better way than through online to differentiate prices and offers amongst different travel providers? And sustainability, more and more on digital, we're able to show how sustainable our companies are. So for example, actually, Google, what we did last year was in our Google Flights platform. So if you search for a flight on Google Flights, we will always highlight any flight that has a lower carbon emission than average for that route. So what this means is that all your online platforms that you are working with, be it your website, your social media platforms, your video content, online travel agencies, meta searches, review websites, all of these become really, really important for you, right? If you're not thinking about it, start thinking how you can prioritize your digital strategy to kind of meet all of those needs that we mentioned of the traveler. I mean, as I mentioned, what we need to do is turn inspiration into booking, right, with a seamless booking process. Just as an example, if you use, for example, Google Maps is a great place for providing credible reviews to your traveler, but at the same time, move them from inspiration into booking, because you can connect your booking directly with Google My Business. And this is just an example of what you can do across digital. Now, obviously, we are living in very volatile times, and it can be really, really hard to overcome this say-do gap and understand how big it is for each of the travel experiences, for the travel factors that we were analyzing. But what we hope is that some of the insights that we provided here today help you kind of bridge the gap and understand really what customers need and not what they say they need. So I hope this was helpful. Once again, thank you so much to Nest for inviting me. If you have any questions, I'll be available afterwards. Thank you.